So essentially what we are going to do today is talk about funding sources, okay, which was covered in that presentation, but I will briefly touch upon that. Then we will talk about dilution. I think a lot of founders don't understand, how the dilution works. Then, there was a request from some of you to talk about cap tables or capitalization table. So we'll talk about that. And then we will talk about unpriced rounds. We will talk about safe and convertible notes. And if you remember last time I mentioned that there is a pitch, elevator pitch to ask for funding. So we will cover that also, and then we will go into valuation. How people do valuation, and I will confine my valuation to very, very early stage startups only, because as we go further to Series A and Series B round, it gets a little more complex. Okay. And then we will talk about investors' perspective, what you need to understand from an investor's perspective. And this was also covered in the video. I will touch upon one or two slides there, and I will take an example also of a real example. Okay. And then we will look at the funding process, what are the stages. It is not just that you pitch and you get a check written to you, but what are the various stages that it has to go through. And I will cover that both for seed as well as angel investments. Okay. And finally, if I have the time, then I will talk about term sheets. Okay. And what are the things that you have to be careful about when they're written in the term sheets. Okay. So these are the funding sources that you have to fund your startup, right from your own capital to friends, family, to the capital that incubators or accelerators can provide you, crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding, angels, seed funds, and so on. Okay. What is important for the startups at your stage is only these rounds of funding. Okay. So, it is important, as an investor, to see that you have put your skin in the game. Okay. So, people always expect that you have bootstrapped the company for a while. If you just have a fancy idea and you take a pitch and say, okay, I have this nice idea based on my experience, I want you to fund me. Nobody will fund you. Nobody will fund you. Okay. They want to say that you have your blood, sweat in the game. Okay. And your dollars also, if possible. Okay. And then the second source obviously is your friends and family, your uncles. We call it friends, families, and fools because the last F is because there are a lot of people who don't understand the business, why they're investing, when they're investing, but they will just it's a herd mentality, right? This friend of mine is investing, let me also put the money here. Okay. So it's a FFF round. Then incubators and accelerators. I have seen a lot of startups survive just purely on money from accelerators. Okay. So they win this contest because they have some fancy idea, and they get 50,000, 100,000, going through the programs, and they keep surviving and developing their startup, take it to an MVP that can be launched also. Crowdfunding is ideally a situation that goes very well for startups which have physical hardware, something of physical nature to offer. So for example, you have a backpack with a bottle that you can drink from there, and it can show you the temperature and all those kind of things, ideal for crowdfunding. Okay. Equity crowdfunding is nothing but a normal kind of funding, but very, very small investors come in. Okay, very small investors. So people could be investing something like $100, $1,000, $2,000, and become a part of the entire equity round. That's like a single investor entry in your cap table. Okay. Then angels, I think all of you know, typically most of these angels are early entrepreneurs, who have now made the money and want to invest in about 4 or 5 startups rather than running their own startups. Okay. Some people want to take a back seat and just keep investing. And those are typically the angels. So there are regular angels. There are small people who have made money in some other business, and they are enamored by this startup fever that is going on, and they want to put their money. Okay. And then comes the seed fund. Seed fund is very close to an institutional round. Okay. Very often it works like an institutional round, like a VC round. Okay. But sometimes, if your seed funding is very small, like $1 million or so, then the parameters are closer to the angel investment than to the institutional rounds. The other avenues of funding also are government grants and schemes. Okay, I've seen a lot of startups here again, if you are into an impact kind of startup, if you are into a startup that aligns with some of the schemes that the government is providing, you could straight away go and ask for a lot of funding there. Okay, so there are small business association loans, there are government schemes and so on that you can use for funding. Okay, so this was all covered in detail in the video. So I will not dwell too much into it. But let's go and try to understand what is dilution. Okay, so I'm going to take you through a case that 3 people come together and decide to form a company. Okay, so this is the company that you have formed. Okay, so like George Orwell says, all people are equal, but some are more equal than the others. Okay, so one of the founders, who is the first founder, decides to keep 40%, giving 30% to the other 2 founders. So your founder equity here, FE, is the founder equity, that is 100%. Okay, but what is the value of your company? Zilch. Okay, nobody knows, right, whether your company has any value or not. So there's no value in the company until an investor comes along. Okay, so let's say this is the friends and family round. Okay, an investor comes in and says, I'm going to give 200K. Okay, but I want 10% of the equity. So you go through this negotiation and say, okay, I'll give you 10% of the equity. So what happens is when you give him the 10%, your founder equity is going to be reduced by the 10%. So it's going to be 90% now. And that 90% will be prorated across the 3 founders based on their earlier holding. Okay. Now, since you have given him 10% of the company at 200K, your enterprise value of the company is now 2 million. So that's the valuation of your company. So it's a 2 million valuation company where friends and family holds 10% of the company and the rest of the founders hold 90% of the company. Then you go to another round. Okay, but why do we need this 2 million? Okay, because I explained to you, because you need to value how much equity you will give to the FNF. That's why this valuation really becomes important. And we'll talk about that a little later. Now you go to your next round. Your next round is a seed investor. Okay, so you have a seed investor who's coming in and you decided to give him 20% of the equity, which is he's investing about 2 million. Okay, and your enterprise value after the funding is 10 million. Okay, so you have given him the 20% for 2 million. At the same time, the investor has also asked you, because this will often happen. Okay, at the seed round or at the series round, the investors will ask you to carve out stock options separately. Okay, and the reason that is done is, if you do not carve out that and then try to allocate shares and then carve out the ESOP later on, it will eat into the seed investor's equity percentage. Okay, so he will always tell you, and this will be one of the conditions in your term sheet, that you should carve out the ESOP. Now, ESOP need not be 15%. We will talk about that also a little later. It could be lower than 15%, but I'm just taking it as an example. So here your enterprise value is 10 million. Okay, and your founder equity is now reduced to 59%. Okay, so this is how your equity is going to be constantly diluted as you start raising more and more money. Okay, but at the same time, you will see that your enterprise value or the valuation of the company is consistently increasing. Okay, so now let's look at one more round, and that round is your Series A round. Okay, so Series A round, investor comes and says, I'm going to put 10 million in your company. He takes 25% equity. Your enterprise value is 40 million because you have given him 25% at 10 million. And accordingly, everybody else gets diluted now. So you will see your ESOPs have also reduced now, okay, to 11%. Okay, and this is the time the Series A investor might say that, okay, you have to top up your ESOP and bring them back from 11 to 15%. But that's a discussion, separate discussion. I'm not going to talk about that too much over here. But you will see generally the founder's equity is now down to 44%. So why should you keep raising money and keep diluting your equity? The reason is very simple. Okay, your founder's equity was worth nothing before you got an investor. Moment you got the first investor, your founder's equity was 90% of 2 million, which is 1.8 million. In the second round, although your equity was reduced to 59%, the founder's valuation now suddenly became 5.8 million. Okay. And in the final round, the Series A round, although you have only 44% equity, your valuation is now 17.5 million. Okay. So as you diluted, your company valuation increased, and, your founder equity value also increased. Okay. Now, all this funding and the equity that everybody holds is captured in what we call as a cap table. Okay. So cap table or capitalization table, that's the full form, is basically how your company ownership is distributed across various stakeholders and the founders. Okay. So investors, founders, how it is distributed. And it may not always be just the investors and the founders. It could also be your advisors, your experts that you are trying to engage. Okay. So, you might decide to give them also some equity. Okay. So that will also get distributed over there. Okay. Because see, an expert or an advisor can either invest time or money or both. Okay. So depending on that, they will negotiate, what kind of percentage they want from your company. Now, I will take a look at a real cap table over here. Okay. So if you look at this capitalization table, stare at it nicely. Okay. There are 3 employees, employee number 1, 2, 3. These are 3 founders. Okay. These are 3 founders. Some of them are holding stock. Some of them are holding stock plus options. Some of them are holding only options. Okay. And I'll explain to you why that happens. Okay. And then you see there are other employees, there are advisors, there are consultants, and there is also the option pool. So all this gets captured into what we call as the cap table. Okay. You will see a term there called fully diluted. Okay. So what does fully diluted market cap mean? It means if all the stock options were to be converted to equity, okay, what will be the share of the share? What will be your share in the company? Okay. So now employee 1 here who has 7.5 million stock. Okay. So this is the number of units. Okay. 7.5 million stock. Okay. Has only stock, has no options because he is the first founder. Okay. So he founded the company, he was holding 100% earlier. Now he's got reduced to this. Okay. So right now he's holding a big chunk of the company here. Now he brought in a co-founder. Okay. When he brought in the co-founder, okay, the co-founder said, okay, what stock are you going to give me? He says, look, I want you to stay with the company for at least 4 years, right? And, I have met you, I like you, we have been at school together, but, I just want to make sure that this is your piece of cake. Okay. And that you have your interest to stay longer. So the first founder may negotiate with the second founder that I'll give you part stock and part option. Okay. Now, this is very interesting, very important for you to understand, because I have seen companies die just because, 3 founders or 2 founders both had equity, both of them fought, and then the company had to be dissolved. Okay. So this can happen. Okay. Because otherwise what will happen is, okay, let's say you are 2 founders. Okay. Both of them are 50-50%. Okay. And then some investment comes in, both founders become 40%. Okay. And after the investment comes in, founder 2 gets a better job and he says, I'm going to quit now. And he carries that entire 40% equity with him, and he doesn't have to work for it for the rest of his life. Right. So you don't want that to happen. That's why, you will spread out that equity over options that will vest over 3 or 4 years. This is a part of your interesting negotiation that you can do. Okay. So we are talking about this part, right? Now, employee 3, that is a third co-founder that they hired. This is a kick-ass sales guy, who's coming in. I can do this, I can do that. I have run hundreds of millions of dollars of sales. So, you're going to tell him that, okay, I love you. You are my co-founder, but I'm going to give you options, and these options will vest over the next 4-year period. Okay. And also when the options vest, you must have something which is called as cliff. Cliff means for a certain period of time, the options don't vest. Okay, so usually the cliff is about 6 months. Okay, so for 6 months, no options will vest. They will be accrued, and suddenly they will vest on month 6 at the end of month 6. Okay, so that is typically called as a cliff. Cliff can be 3 months, 6 months. There can be no cliff. This is all a matter of negotiation. Okay. Now, the second pool that you see over here, these are your advisors, consultants, because you will require a lot of support. You may not have all the technical knowledge. You might want to engage a machine learning expert, an AI expert, or you might want to engage a business strategy expert, a partnership expert. So usually you will engage them with these options. Okay, so and that again is a matter of negotiation, right? How much you give them, and what percentage of your equity will be there. Okay, so it's usually what happens is in the very early stages of your startup, the advisor equities are high, or they look high. Okay, but they are not really high, because as you go, because the advisors know as you start raising money, and the more the money you raise, the more they will get diluted. Okay, and more they will have very little say in the company at all. Okay, so you have to see, you'll often hear that CEOs are being hired and they are being given 1.5% equity, the large companies. Okay, or and a nice golden parachute and all that. Okay, now 1.5%. So if an advisor comes to you and says, I want something more than that, and then you say, no, I will give you 1.5% because that's the industry standard and that's the industry norm, it does not work out that way. Okay, because you are taking in advisors when there is no value in the company or very little value in the company, and the failure rate is going to be very high. Okay, as we said earlier, 96% of the startups will fail, right? So the failure rates are very high. So this is the summary of the cap table, as you see down below here. Okay, employees have 91%, 91.6%. Advisors have 2.8%, and option pool is 5.6. Okay, and these numbers will vary from case to case. Now, since you see that this investment is tied to valuation, okay, we said, okay, 2 million valuation, he gave me 200K, so I gave him 10% of the equity. So investment is tied to the valuation. So what happens if there is no way to arrive at valuation at all? Okay, and you have started a company, you have this 1,000 users using your product. Okay, and it's a SaaS product, just paying you $10 a year or $10 a month. There's hardly any revenue there. How do you arrive at the valuation? In this case, we don't arrive at the valuation. Okay, the startup is too early. Okay, and it's very hard to arrive at the valuation. What we do is we do a round which is called as unpriced round. Okay, so we don't price the round, and we use two instruments over here. Okay, one is called as the convertible note, and the other is called as S.A.F., S.A.F.E, which stands for Simple Agreement for Future Equity. Okay, very simple. So convertibles, what is a convertible? Okay, the convertible is a note or an agreement which says that, when a certain event occurs, I have the option to convert that loan that I'm giving you into equity. Okay, so those terms are discussed and captured in the convertible note. Okay, so I will go further and also talk about what are the terms in the convertible note. Then there is another instrument which is called a S.A.F., and this was introduced by Y Combinator because the convertibles were getting very complicated, and the founders were spending a lot of time negotiating the terms in the convertible. Okay, so they said that forget about convertibles and all, let's make it very simple for founders. Let's do something called as a S.A.F. So what is S.A.F? S.A.F says that I give you X money now, okay, and when you do second round of funding at a certain agreed parameters on the valuation, you will assign me equity for that. Okay, so that is simply the S.A.F. Okay, so what both of these instruments will do is they will convert your equity on the next round. Okay, but they will do it at a discounted price, and they are always subject to something called as a max cap. Okay, So what is this max capitalization, okay, or max cap? So let's take an example of convertible, okay. So I'm going to walk you through, various terms in the convertible, okay. So one is the amount of note. So let's say you are raising 100K, okay. And then the interest rate, because it is like a debt, it is like a loan, okay. So there will be an interest rate. Now that interest rate can be a simple interest rate or it could be a compound interest rate, okay. And that is again a matter of negotiation that you have, right? Then you have the term of the debt, okay, which means at the end of 12 months, if you're at the end of 12 months, you are actually liable to pay back the note amount with that interest, which you have agreed to, okay. So that's the term. The term can be 12 months, the term can be 18 months, the term can be 24 months. It's open to negotiation, typically, when somebody is doing a convertible with you, they will ask you, when is your next round, and if you say that my next round is in 6 months, then they will say, okay, I will give you 12 months and I will do a term of 12 months. Then there is something called as a discount, okay. Now, what is this discount? Now, this person is giving you 100K when he does not even know the valuation of your company, okay. He is playing blind on you, okay. So after, let's say 6 months or after 8 months, you are going to raise money with a priced round, okay. Now the valuation of the company would have gone up. Why has the valuation of the company gone up? Because this guy has paid you the money which you used to achieve certain milestones to increase that valuation in your company. So obviously he has to be at an advantage, right? Investing early, playing blind, when there is no way to value your business. So he will ask you for a discount. That means if somebody values your company at 20 million, then his equity should be looked at as 20 million less 20%. Okay. So you will take that 4 million out. So, he will be assigned equity for 100K based on 16 million. Then there is something called as a valuation cap. Okay. So even if you're raising convertible note, even if it is unpriced round, the investor will always ask you, what do you think is the valuation of your company at this point in time? Okay. So he will put you in a spot there and you should have some answer to that. Okay. What valuation cap what is your valuation currently? So you will have some rough number saying that, okay, right now my company valuation is X, but I hope that it will go to Y. And so based on that, he will do a valuation cap from you. Now I'll tell you what is the meaning of valuation cap. And a lot of people, founders don't understand what valuation cap and how it plays over here. Okay. So what happens is, he gave you 100K. Okay. And he said that, okay, what is the valuation of the company today? He says, yeah, about 2 million. Okay. So he says, okay, what is the next round going to be like? Okay. So he says, next point round could be anywhere from 5 to 6 million. Okay. So he'll put a cap saying that, okay, if the next round is higher than 5 million, okay, for assigning equity to me, you should consider 5 million as the valuation of the company. Okay. Because here is what could happen. Okay. Taking this 100K, the smart founders raise the valuation of the company to 20 million suddenly. Okay. And a big investor now comes in. Okay. Now 100K at 20 million is peanuts, right? That's why he's trying to cap it, saying that even if the valuation increases to 20 million, you are capped now to 5 million. Now, this is a very tricky situation. The tricky because, the new investors are going to look at the market cap, okay, of your earlier investors, because when they do the due diligence on you, they're going to look at all your convertibles, S.A.F.E, everything that they're going to see you, okay. And then they suddenly find, that your expectation was about 6-7 million. Okay, that's why you capped it at 5 million. Okay, I will give you some benefit of doubt and I will give you 10 million. So, suddenly you are in a dilemma there, right? Whether, you have stunted your chances of getting a 20 million valuation because you locked yourself in this valuation cap. So be very careful when you lock yourself in the valuation cap. Okay. And finally, what happens with the note if you raise the funding? So there will be a clause which is called as an auto conversion clause. Okay. Auto conversion means in the convertible note, we write down, it's like an agreement, right? We write down that once you raise the next financing round, I have the option to convert my equity. Okay. So I have the option to convert my equity on a qualified financing round. Or, you might just decide to sell off that company. Then what happens to his convertible, right? So he wants some upside on the acquisition. So if somebody acquires a company, he will already lay down the term saying that if there's a change of control, then I should get a premium of 2x. That means what I invested is 100K, you have to give me now 200K, okay? And then you keep the rest, okay? So there can be a change of control premium, okay? So all these things get negotiated. So this is a convertible note. Now let's look at, how this works in case of a S.A.F. In case of the S.A.F, there is no interest rate or there is no term, okay? Usually the S.A.F is very open-ended, saying that I have given you this equity. When you convert, you give me so much equity in it, okay? You convert this into equity at the next round, which will happen. And these are very optional, okay? There may not be any valuation cap. There may not be any discount also in S.A.F, okay? It all depends on how well ideally, that is the basic premise of a S.A.F, that have this instrument founder friendly, okay, and not have the founder worrying about all these financial jargons, okay. So they might just completely eliminate that, but they will always have this clause of change of control premium, that if you happen to sell the company, then this is what happens, okay. I don't know how many of you have seen a convertible note or a S.A.F note, but this is what they look like actually, okay. It's like an agreement, okay. It's basically like an agreement, and you can Google and get a lot of formats of this one, okay. Now I want you to carefully look at the S.A.F agreement, okay. So S.A.F agreement over here is an investor S.A.F, okay. There can be another type of S.A.F, and that S.A.F can apply to your investors, to your advisors, okay. So here you see what is written in this first line. This certifies that in exchange of teaching, business strategy support, fundraising assistance, and other services provided, okay, the company hereby issues this S.A.F, okay. Equity financing equal to 2% of the fully diluted or whatever it is, okay. So because if you are engaging somebody to raise money for you, obviously he's not going to do it for free. He's going to ask you for some money on the amount that is raising for you, okay. And higher the amount that is raised, the percentages can be smaller, okay, but lower the raise, the percentages are higher, okay. They can be very high actually, depending on what that startup brings to the table. Now we'll talk about the fundraising elevator pitch. You remember I mentioned to you last time, that there is something called as a fundraising elevator pitch. So these are the 6 things that you have to first list out and then prepare your pitch. Okay. The first question, obviously, in the fundraising pitch is, how much are you raising? So say I'm raising 500K. How are you raising? Is it a convertible? Is it a S.A.F? Is it an angel investment? So you can write that convertible, let's say, okay. What terms are you raising it on? Okay. So if it is an angel investment, you can say, okay, so much of equity and so on. Okay. If it's a convertible, you will say, okay, I will give you 8% interest and 20% discount. Okay. 8% interest, 20% discount is pretty normal here in the Silicon Valley. I think it might not be applicable in India. You'll have to go and check, what works in India. Okay. When are you raising the money? Okay. So when you talk to somebody about fundraising, you may not be raising the fund. You might just be sensing the market, what is the appetite, for people to invest in my company. So you could very well say, okay, I'm going to start raising in 2 months time. Okay. From whom? I'm going to go to local angels group. And why do you need this, right? So I want to leverage my growth that I'm experiencing with 2 new use cases. So I want to step on the gas and try to grow with these 2 new use cases. And that is going to be my projection, so much more business and so on and so forth. Okay. So this is what you will say, okay, in your fundraising elevator pitch. Okay. We'll be raising 500K convertible after 2 months from local angel group to leverage the growth we are experiencing with 2 more use cases. Okay. Now you want to raise from a position of strength. Okay. So as a rough guide, raise money when you have figured out what the market opportunity is and who the customer is. Okay. When you have delivered a product that matches the needs of the customer and is being adopted at an interestingly rapid rate, okay, that's the time. That's a good time to go and raise the money. Okay. Now, two other terms that you need to be aware of when you are doing fundraising. One is called as the pre-money valuation, and one is called the post-money valuation. So let's take a look at this. Okay. You go to somebody to raise money and he asks you, okay, what do you consider the value of the company to be today? Okay. So you say for money. So that for money is your pre-money valuation. Okay. So this is the valuation of the company before the investment is made in the company. And let's say you go and raise 1 million. Okay. So pre-money plus the amount invested becomes your post-money. Okay. So after you take this round, your valuation will be 5 million, which is the current valuation plus the investment, and that's your post-money valuation. Okay. So basically, I've seen this math error with a lot of people. They will say, okay, my pre-money valuation is 4 million, and you will say, okay, so how much equity will you give me? Oh, I'm raising 1 million, so I'll give you 25%. No, you will be giving him only 20% now. So what determines the investor percentage, ownership percentage, is the post-money valuation and not the pre-money valuation. So be careful with that when you talk about this. Okay. Now let's come to fundraising valuation. Okay, when people start asking you what is the valuation and you want to put some number over there in the priced rounds, how do we do it? Okay, so you say we are raising. This is one way to do the valuation talk. Okay, we are raising 500K at 20% of the company. Okay, so which means that post money, okay, valuation, I'll give you 20% of that company. I will give 500K. So the math is like this. Okay. My post-money valuation is now 2.5 million, just based on this statement on the top. How is that? Because 500K is going to be 20%. Okay, so what is the whole? It is 2.5 million, right? It's simple arithmetic. Okay, so when you use that statement, I'm raising 500K at 20 million, you are declaring your post-money valuation. Okay, so be clear in your mind when you do that. You're also declaring your pre-money valuation. Okay, because it will be your post-money minus that 500K investment, which will be 2 million. Okay, so this is how it works. Your pre-money valuation is 2 million, investment is 500,000, your post-money is 2.5 million, and the equity you're offering for that 500,000 is on 2.5 million. That is 20%. Okay. Now let's keep this math here and look at another way to do valuation talk. Okay. The other way to do valuation talk is we are raising 500K at 2 million pre. Okay. So that is another way to say. So when we say pre, it means pre-money valuation. Okay. So people like to use short forms over here in Silicon Valley. And now everywhere, all over the world, they're doing that. Okay. So when you say 2 million pre, your post-money valuation will be 2 million plus 500K, it is 2.5 million. Okay, which means now you're going to give him 20% equity. See, you didn't say the equity earlier, but now your equity is now getting calculated as 20%. Okay, so that brings us to an important topic, which is the valuation. Okay, how do we determine the valuation? So let me tell you the first rule of startup valuation. Okay, the first rule of startup valuation is your company is worth what you and your investor agree it is worth. Okay. No amount of numbers, no amount of figures that anybody pulls out of the hat matter to you at this early stage of your company. Okay. But let me show you some thumb rules that are there. Okay. We call this as the 4x trick. Okay. The 4x trick is multiply your raise amount by 4. Okay. Suppose you are raising 2 million. Okay. You will multiply it by 4. That gives you your pre-money valuation, that is 8 million. Okay. So suddenly, I see people coming and saying, I want to raise 2 million. Okay. So when you're saying 2 million, you understand what is happening in the investor's mind. Okay. In the investor's mind, he's saying, okay, that means this guy is talking of 8 million pre. Okay. Which means his post million is going to be 10 million. Okay. And I'm going to get 20% for that 2 million investment. Is that company worth it? Okay. Very, very simply, that's how he is going to think. Okay. So this is the investment ownership map that I showed you, right? 8 million pre-money plus around is 10 million. So I'm going to get 20% of the equity. Now there is also a reverse math that VCs do. Okay. So let's talk about the reverse math. Okay. In the reverse math, what happens is, okay, the VC will see, how much money does the startup need. So he will look at your milestones. Okay. Very important. What milestones are you going to achieve? Why do you need money to achieve those milestones? Where are you going to spend? Okay, so he will look at all that, and he will look at this. How long is it going to take for you to reach those milestones? 9 months, 12 months, 18 months. Okay, so that is the runway. We call that as a runway. Okay, so that is the runway that he's going to give you. Okay, so let's say you are now raising 3 million seed round for a 12-month runway. Okay, so moment you say that, how much now the VC is thinking, okay, if I give him 3 million in 12 months time, I see his valuation going so much. I want a 20% equity in this company. Okay. So how much company does the VC desire? Okay. So that will be the next thing. And I will tell you, there are certain norms of how much equity people take at each stage also. Okay. So desired equity is 20%. What will be the post money with 3 million and 20% equity? Okay, so the post money will be 15 million. Okay, so 15 million minus 3 million will be a 12 million pre-money round. Okay, it's very simple math. If you understand what is pre-money, if you understand what is post money, and you understand the equity percentage is always based on post money, all this is permutation combinations of the same thing. Okay. Then there is another method. Okay, I'm going to cover this as the last method. I'm not going to go into other methods that are used. Okay, just to keep it simple. And because we have very little time here, you are like a start. So here is a method, a market comparison method. Okay, so this is a comparison based on industry niche, founder experience, company location, traction, business model, whether B2B, B2C. Okay, the stage your startup is at, whether it is MVP, beta, early release, the funding so far that you have received, your valuation that other investors have done, who are your current investors. Okay, so based on that, they will compare you with a similar company which they have come across, or because they study a lot of reports, right? Or there are tools like Traction, PitchBook, Crunchbase, which allow this kind of comparison, and then they will say, okay, roughly his valuation is so much. Okay. So one thing you need to understand about valuation is, as you hit milestones, okay, your valuation keeps increasing. Okay. So in the early stage, do we know what problem we are solving? That's your first inflection point. Will somebody pay? When you confirm that, that somebody is going to pay for that, you do this customer validation, then your next inflection point is, does it actually work? Okay. And will many more people pay? So you don't want 10, 15 people to pay, you want thousands, 100,000 people to be paying for that. Okay. So you'll see that each of these milestones that you achieve, your valuation keeps increasing. Okay. And when you go into the growth stage also, there are certain other key inflection points. Okay. That is, now, so far founders have been selling. Now, can you bring non-founders and can they sell? That means, can you build a sales process? Okay. Can you build a repeatable sales process? Is your growth predictable? Okay. Can you scale without excessive churn? Okay. And then finally, until then, you don't think profits, right? And then finally, you'll say, okay, I have a repeatable, scalable, predictable model. Now, can I scale profitably? And I will step on the gas, to build my valuation in the company or go to the next stage of the company. So here is one story that I'm going to tell. Okay. So because it is very important that you go to the right investors. Okay. So this is the story of a daughter who came to her father and said, okay, Dad, I'm going to do a startup. Okay. So the father tells the daughter, you are embarking on your startup journey. I'm very glad that you have decided to take the leap. Okay. Take my car here, which I bought years ago. Okay. She's a little older now. But before I give it to you, I want you to go to the used car dealer and tell him that you want to sell it and ask him how much will he offer you for this car. Okay. And that is my investment in your company. So he's like an investor. He's saying that, okay, I will give you this asset and they can invest. Okay. So daughter goes to the used car dealer and returns to her father and says, okay, they offered me $1,000 for this car because it is pretty worn out. Okay. So the father says, okay, let's try another angle. Okay. So, I need better price than that. Okay. So he says, okay, go to a pawn shop, okay, where people mortgage stuff, okay, and find out the price of this car. The daughter goes to the pawn shop, returns back and says, okay, they only offered me $100. Dad, your car is not worth anything. Okay. So, means now I am in doubt whether I should consider invest to be $100,000 or $100. So the father says, give me one more chance. Okay. Now take this car, okay, and go to a vintage car dealer, okay, and ask him what is the price of this car. So doctor goes to the car club, where they take this vintage cars, and she comes back and says, something, Dad, they offered me 100,000 for this car because it is a rarity that is in great demand among the collections. Now the father says, I will give you the car for free. That's not my investment. I want you to understand this lesson. Okay. If you go in the wrong place, you get wrong valuation. So go to only those, who understand your valuation. Okay. So similarly, when you start approaching investors, you have to approach investors who know how to value you as a person, and they know how to value your ideas also. Okay. So in very early stage, the valuations will never show the true value of the company. Okay. I mean, you can struggle, you can beat your head on the floor, but they will always keep arguing. Okay. So the reason you go to investors who care for you, who will see the value in what you're offering, is because the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Okay. While we say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, if you have watched the video, which I had asked you to watch, you will see that the investor, she is always looking for a golden nugget. Okay. She is looking at, what is the probability of 20 times valuation for me to get a 10x return. Okay. So this math is explained in that video, why you need to get 20x valuation for the investor to get 10x return, simply because of the dilution. Okay. I'm going to take a very live example over here. This is the company that came to me week before last. Okay. And this is a slide from the company. I will not disclose which the company is, but they are into vertical takeoff and landing. Okay. So, they are focused on the agricultural sector. Okay. It's a brilliant company. I love this company. Now look at how they're asking for money, how they're doing that investment slide. Okay. Now they say that they want 8.5 million, and they said the cap is 34 million. Okay. So basically he's saying that my pre-money is 34 million and I want 8.5 million, right? So if I add 8.5 million to 34 million, that will give me my post money. Okay. So he's saying offer of 25% share. You should never say this. Okay. Because once you say capital and the cap, okay, it is understood how much equity will go to him. He also says I have a runway of 24 months, after which, means I want to raise my next round, which will be at 87 million cap. Okay. Now let's see, if I have to invest money in this company, how will I think? Okay. So let me show you the whole mechanics, how the mind works. Okay. So round A, the pre-money is 34 million euros. Okay. The round is 8.5 million euros. So the post money, this is the company in Europe. Okay. It's in Spain. So my post money valuation of this company is 42.5 million. Okay. The founders will keep 80%, the investors will get 20. Okay. Because, I will take 8.5 on 42.5 and I will not take 25% on 34. Right. So that's how the investor A. So investor A is a bunch of people. Okay. We just call them as investor A because nobody is going to put 8.5 million in a single check. Okay. So they will say, okay, I will put 3 million. Somebody will say I'll put 4 million. Somebody will say I'll put 1 million and so on. Okay. So if I look at round B, which is 2 years down, because he said I have 24 month runway. Okay. My round B is going to be 87 pre. Okay. Now, if I raise 29 million in round B, my post money will be 116 million. Okay. So, typically the next round, which is your series round, the investors will want to take about 25 million, 25% of the company. Okay. So usually the series A rounds are 20% up. Okay, Series B round are 25% up and so on. But it's not always the case, because there are unicorns where such percentages do not work. Okay, but just generally by and rule, let's say investor B comes in, he says 25 million. So if I decide to invest 1 million in this company, okay, of this investor who's investing in the company, the equity that I am only 11.76% of 8.5 million. Okay, so my equity that I will get is 2.35% in this bunch of investors A. Okay, for 1 million valuation that I put, 1 million that I'm investing, 1 million euros that I'm investing. In the second round, investor A gets diluted by 15%. Okay, so my equity also gets diluted to 1.76%. But because the valuation has increased to 116 million, okay, my value in the company has gone 2x. Okay, very interesting. Now I will assume that this company will exit, let's say in 2025. Okay, so if this company has to exit in 2025, and I will assume that, this company, I will take a reasonable guess, it will exit at 5 times this 116, which is 580 million, very conservative estimate. Okay, my equity of 1.76% will be now worth 10 million. Okay, so I have invested 1 million. Okay, in 5 years, my equity has gone 10 times. Okay, this is the math investors do. Okay, so I just wanted to give you an example and show how they will think. You don't have to go through all this calculations, but it gives you a good insight into how you're talking about current round, future round, your exits, your valuation, where, what is your big vision, what do you think you will exit the company at, and why those discussions really matter, and what math is going on in the minds of the investors. Okay, the other questions we generally I get asked is, how much money should I ask for? Okay, so there are various views on it. Some people will say, oh, raise as much money as you want. Okay, as much money as you can. Okay, yeah, absolutely great thing to do, but not at the cost of your equity. Okay, because a big round is not going to suddenly make your business more viable. Your growth trajectory and your positive cash flow is what will make your business worth something. It will get the valuation to that company. Okay, and with large rounds, you are likely to lose your control on the company. Okay, so when you look at the term sheets, you will understand what are the controls that you will have to compromise on when you start raising money. Okay, so your ask should be based on your runway to achieve the milestones that will put you in the next orbit of valuation. Okay, that should be your typical ask. Okay, and you can be a little conservative. Okay, you can say that, okay, I can achieve this milestone in 12 months, but I'm going to say 18 months as my ask. Okay, and start planning accordingly. Okay. So these are the typical things. I think most of you may be aware of it. Pre-seed round typically is 50 to 250K. Seed round is $500,000 to 2 million. These are typical. Okay, there are exceptions always. Okay, so typical industry valuations is 1 to 3 million for a pre-seed round, and 5 to 15 million for a seed round. Okay, your runways also are there. And who are the typical investors is all very clearly written over here. And this slide is coming to you, so you can read it later on also. Now, the expectation which Alankar was trying to set last time, if you remember, he said that, what is the purpose of this pitch that you are going to do? The purpose of this pitch is to get the first meeting. Okay, and so don't come with an expectation that when you pitch on the demo day, somebody is going to sit there and write a check for you. It doesn't happen. Okay, that will get to your first meeting, and then there is a longer path ahead for you. Okay, so if you're raising your seed investment, then your pitch will get to your first meeting. Okay, so what is the goal of your first meeting? To get second meeting. Okay, typically the first meeting will last about 45 minutes. Okay, the goal of the first meeting is to get your second meeting where there are more than one partners coming to look at what you're offering, and they will do a deeper dive, a very deep dive. And this meeting could last as long as 2 hours, hour and a half to 2 hours. Okay, at the end of this meeting, they might decide to give you a term sheet or not. Okay, so term sheet basically means I will give you funding based on certain terms. So that is term sheet. Okay, And there are certain terms in the term sheet, which you might have to negotiate if you have things going on your side. Otherwise, you will have to take what the investor offers you. But that's why we always keep looking for multiple investors before pinning down one. Moment you accept the term sheet, they will, the term sheet also has sometimes something called as a no shop. That means while the term sheet is valid, for the period of 2 months or 90 days or 1 month, you are not supposed to go and talk to any other investor. And that is sacrosanct. Okay. You cannot do that because it is a very closed community. Moment you talk to somebody else, you could be in very deep trouble there. Okay. So it's called as no shop. Okay. But there are some investors which are very friendly. They might say, okay, if you think that you can raise better valuation, go, more power to you, go and raise it from them. Okay. I'll keep my term sheet open. But term sheets are confidential. You're not supposed to take a term sheet of one investor and go and flout it around and show it to another investor. Okay. After that, there will be due diligence. That means, they will now dive into all your records, okay? Your convertibles, your other investments signed, your founder agreements, if you have signed an agreement with the founder, your stock plans, they will go through your customer contracts. What are the terms in the customer contracts, your revenue recognition, whether you're doing cash accounting, accrual accounting, whether that is perfectly fine, how are you recognizing the revenue from the purchases or the orders and so on. Okay. Once they do the due diligence, there is an investment committee that sits. Okay. So typically what happens over here, there's an internal document called as investor memorandum that is prepared, and I'm not going to cover investor memorandum today because we don't have the time. But what happens in the investor memorandum is the partner who is leading your investment is going to prepare a logical argument for why your company should be funded or why your company should not be funded. Okay. And one of the big things that you want to bring to the table there and convey this to the partner properly is the glimmer of greatness for him to see in your company. What could this company potentially become? Okay. What is your big vision? Okay. So because a lot hinges on that glimmer of greatness, okay, that, there is a huge possibility of this company, breaking all the barriers and, trying to get there. Then comes closing. Closing means a lot of legal documentation. Okay. And that certainly takes a lot of time. And moment you sign off on the closing and all that, within a week or 2 weeks, they will remit funds into your account. And this entire process from the first meeting, after the first meeting, will take you about 3 to 6 months. Okay. So that's how the process is. Now, if you go for angel rounds, these are slightly shorter time span because you will have fewer meetings leading you there. After the first meeting, there will be a second meeting and immediately they will give a term sheet right after the second meeting. Okay. And then they will do a simple due diligence. What happens in the angel investment is, if somebody is leading the round and the angel trusts that person, he will not even do due diligence on you. Okay. So a lot happens on, who is leading the round or, who is the investor who has put the money down and committed that round. Okay. So for example, one of the companies, where we are doing a round, there are 2 large corporate venture investment arms that are investing. These are very large CVCs, okay, that are investing. Moment you say that to the investor, they will say, okay, I don't need to do due diligence because these are very capable people. If they are saying that this is the valuation, we will go ahead and invest. So, sometimes you might just be able to circumvent that entire due diligence process. And then there is this partner meeting where all this info memorandum and all this stuff happens. And then closing and sending funds. So closing and sending funds is very quick. Moment you sign a couple of documents there, they will just remit the funds, within a couple of days into your account. Okay. So this is what a term sheet looks like. Okay, you will see there are a lot of terms over here on the left-hand side, and I'm not going to go deeper into it because this will take about at least 10 minutes to make you understand what it is. But just understand that there are 2 aspects of term sheet. One is the economic aspect of the term sheet, which is in terms of valuation, the cap, okay, ESOPs, the preference stocks and non-preference stocks, all those kind of things that come in. There are 3 things that happen over here. There is something called as the anti-dilution clause that people will sometimes try to insert into this economics. Okay. There are also some exit provisions, that may come in, and these are generally tied into whether an investor can force you to sell a company. Okay. So this is another problem that occurs. Okay. The founder wants to sell the company. The investor says, no, we will build the company. And I've gone through such examples in real life. Okay. Sometimes the investor wants to sell the company. The founder says, no, I don't want to sell the company. Okay. So there are a lot of exit provisions that get documented. There are liquidation preferences that get documented. Okay. So because, let's say I invested 10 million in your company on the hope that, you will build this company to 100 million. Okay. Tomorrow you fail and you're not able to do that. And this company gets sold for 12 million. So if this company gets sold for 12 million, the investor who's invested 10 million will say, I have the first right on the money. Okay, because I'm a preference holder. So, I will take the 10 million first, and then I will share with you on the 2 million. Okay, so the founders get nothing. So you will hear stories of companies, oh, I had 100 million valuation, I have 200 million valuation, and the founders are carrying home just 2 million, 3 million, 5 million kind of money, right? And not carrying very much. So one is economics, the other is the control. The investors will want to control the company. So they will talk in terms of the board, number of board seats, how can they engage key employees, okay, appointments. So they will not give you complete latitude to go and hire your CMO. You will have to get their approval and so on. Okay. So there are a lot of this other matters like vesting. There's something called as drag along, tag along, that means, when it comes to a secondary transfer on the valuation, but what I will do is, I will give you some notes on that so you can read those notes, and you can see it over here also. Okay. Because, I don't think we have the time to do that. So the moot question is it absolutely necessary to raise money? Okay. And, here I want to bring you an example of a company called MailChimp. I think all of you must have heard of MailChimp. Many people use it for doing email campaigns. So this is the company that is into a space. Now, this is the product category, right? Marketing automation. And you will not say a mail delivery company, you'll say marketing automation for SMEs. That's their category. Okay. This company was formed in 2001. Okay. The company managed their funds so well that they had to raise zero money. Okay. They funded the company from its own earnings. Okay. And along the way, they did 7 acquisitions. Okay. Because, this is 2001 company, right? Your technology will get antiquated, as years pass by, right? So they started acquiring new companies, new technologies, and started building that company to cater to the new demands of the market. Okay. This company just 2 weeks ago was acquired for 12 billion by Intuit. Intuit is the company that does TurboTax and QuickBooks and all that, right? It's here, right here in my city, Mountain View. So they acquired this company for 12 billion. Now imagine, the founder who would be carrying almost 95% equity, okay, laughing very happily to the bank with this 12 billion exit, okay, as against, if you had investors, it would have been a very completely different story there. And this is, by the way, a full cash transaction. Okay. This happened in the middle of September. It's a full cash transaction. Okay. So with that, I'm going to pause over here. And if you have any questions, then we can take those questions or we can move to the presentations. I'm sorry, Alankar, I had just went over a time a little bit.
No, I think everyone benefits from, it's like doing a crash course in venture capital investing.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Incredibly fast,